It is a story that defies our understanding of time, of consciousness, and of the very fabric of human life. A story not of deliberate travel through the fourth dimension, but of an unwilling passage, a silent, suspended journey into a future that was never meant to be theirs. This is the chronicle of the time travelers who never moved, the individuals who closed their eyes in one world and opened them in another, separated not by distance but by decades of lost history. Soft, melancholic piano music begins. Visuals of old black and white family photos from the 70s and 80s. Their journeys began not in a gleaming machine, but in the sterile silence of a hospital bed. A car crash, a workplace accident, a sudden illness. The causes were varied, but the result was the same: a descent into a vegetative state, a world where the body lived on while the mind remained locked in an inaccessible chamber. For their families, time became a cruel, elastic thing, stretching from days into weeks, then months, then years, and finally, impossibly, into decades. They were present, yet absent, caught in a temporal limbo. While the world outside marched relentlessly forward, they remained unchanged, frozen in the year their consciousness ceased. Visuals shift to a hospital room, a patient lying still. Calendar pages flip rapidly from the 1980s through the 90s and into the 2000s. Consider the case of Terry Wallis. In 1984, he was a young man of 19, newly married, with a baby daughter. A horrific truck accident plunged him into a coma. For 19 years, he lay unresponsive. The world he knew, a world of Ronald Reagan, of landline telephones, of the Soviet Union, faded into the pages of history books. Then, one day in 2003, without warning, he spoke. His first word was Mom. His second was Pepsi. He believed it was still 1984. He was a teenager trapped in the body of a 39-year-old man, looking at a daughter who was now a grown woman he had never met. Split screen, a black and white photo of a young Terry Wallis on one side, a color photo of him in a hospital bed in 2003 on the other. How does the human body, and more mysteriously, the human brain, endure such a prolonged state of suspension? In a vegetative state, the brainstem, which controls essential functions like breathing, heart rate, and sleep-wake cycles, remains active. The body is kept alive through meticulous, round-the-clock care, feeding tubes for nutrition, regular turning to prevent bed sores, and physical therapy to stave off muscular atrophy. It is a state of biological survival, a machine kept running while its operator is absent. But the question that haunted neurologists for decades was whether the higher brain, the seat of consciousness and self, was truly gone, or merely dormant, waiting for a connection to be re-established. Visuals of brain scans, showing areas of low activity. A nurse gently moves the limbs of a comatose patient. For those who do awaken, the first moments are not of joyous reunion, but of profound and terrifying disorientation. The first sensory inputs are an assault of the unfamiliar. Jan Grzebski, a Polish railway worker, fell into a coma in 1988, a time when his country was still firmly behind the Iron Curtain, ruled by a communist regime. When he awoke 19 years later, in 2007, he found himself in a world of vibrant capitalism. He looked out the window and saw streets filled with colorful advertisements and unfamiliar models of cars. The bleak, gray Poland he remembered was gone, replaced by a riot of consumerism and freedom he could not comprehend. A split screen shows a gray, Soviet-era Polish street fading into a modern, bustling Warsaw street filled with bright colors and modern cars. An actor portraying Grzebski looks out a window with a bewildered expression. His first reactions to modern technology were ones of pure astonishment. His family showed him a mobile phone. He stared at the small, glowing rectangle, utterly baffled by how people could walk down the street talking to someone who wasn't there. The television, once a box with a handful of state-controlled channels, now offered hundreds of options, filled with programs and faces that were alien to him. He was a man from the analog age thrust into a digital dawn, a world of instant information and constant connection that seemed more like science fiction than reality. He remarked to a Polish news crew, "When I went into a coma, there was only tea and vinegar in the shops. Now I see people on the streets with mobile phones, and there are so many goods in the shops. It makes my head spin." Close-up of a confused face looking at a smartphone, swiping motions seeming magical and strange. Quick cuts of modern TV shows, advertisements, and news clips. This temporal shock extended to every facet of life. The clothes in their closets were strange, made of unfamiliar fabrics and cut in styles that seemed bizarre. Women in positions of power, dressed in sharp business suits, were a startling sight for men who remembered a more rigidly patriarchal society. Even the language had shifted. New slang, new idioms, and new technical terms rendered conversations confusing. Imagine trying to understand a reference to Googling something or sending a text, when the very concepts of the internet and mobile messaging are completely unknown to you. Food, too, was different. The sheer variety available in a modern supermarket, with fruits and vegetables from across the globe, was a source of wonder and confusion for someone who remembered a more limited, local diet. Visual of a person from the 80s looking at modern fashion with a puzzled look. Quick cuts, a woman in a CEO's office, someone using an ATM, a modern supermarket aisle overflowing with exotic produce. The most painful dislocation, however, was social and familial. They woke up as strangers in their own lives. Children had grown into adults with families of their own. Spouses had aged, their faces etched with the lines of 2 or 3 decades of worry and waiting. Friends had moved away or passed on. They were ghosts at a feast, surrounded by loved ones who were, to them, familiar yet utterly different. Their own reflections were a source of shock, the face of a middle-aged or elderly person staring back where youth should be. The world had mourned them, moved on. And then, impossibly, they were back, trying to piece together a life from fragments of memory and the testimony of others. Their families, who had dedicated their lives to caring for a silent body, now had to reintroduce themselves to the person within, navigating the chasm of lost time that separated them. A slow-motion shot of a family reunion in a hospital room. The awakened patient looks at their aged spouse and grown children with a mix of love and confusion. Old family photos are held up next to the real people. Medical science has slowly begun to unravel the mystery behind these miraculous recoveries. The term vegetative state itself has been refined, with researchers now identifying something called a minimally conscious state. In this state, patients may have fleeting, inconsistent signs of awareness that are often missed. Advanced imaging techniques, like functional MRI and PET scans, have shown that even in brains that appear dormant, there can be pockets of preserved neural networks. The key seems to lie in the brain's incredible capacity for plasticity, its ability to reorganize and form new connections. Over years, sometimes decades, the brain may slowly, painstakingly, reroute its own wiring around the damaged areas, eventually restoring the pathways necessary for consciousness to emerge. It's not a switch being flipped, but a slow, biological dawn. Animated graphics of the human brain, showing neural pathways slowly reconnecting and bypassing damaged areas. Text overlays with terms like brain plasticity and minimally conscious state. When asked about the lost time, the survivors offer hauntingly similar responses. For them, there was no passage of time, no dreams, no sense of waiting. It was, as one survivor described it, an absolute nothing. They didn't experience the 90s or the 2000s, they simply weren't there for them. One moment, they were living their life. The next, they were waking up in a hospital bed, being told that presidents had come and gone, wars had been fought, and technologies that reshaped the world had been invented. Terry Wallis, upon learning that the Berlin Wall had fallen and the Cold War was over, simply shook his head in disbelief. He had missed the end of his own historical era. It's a theft of personal history on a scale that is almost impossible to imagine. A time lapse of major world events from 1985 to 2020 plays on a screen, but the screen is slightly out of focus. A survivor's face is superimposed, looking blankly, as if the events have no meaning today. Research continues to push the boundaries of what is possible. Neurologists, citing studies from 2024 and 2025, are experimenting with novel treatments like deep brain stimulation and focused ultrasound to jumpstart dormant neural circuits in patients with disorders of consciousness. While still in early stages, these techniques offer a glimmer of hope that what was once considered a one-in-a-million miracle might one day become a predictable outcome of targeted therapy. Each new case, each recovery, provides invaluable data, adding another piece to the puzzle of human consciousness. Visuals of a modern neurological research lab. Scientists looking at complex brain scans. A patient undergoing a non-invasive brain stimulation procedure. The story of those who have awakened from the long dark is a profound and humbling reminder of the fragility of our perception of reality. They are living paradoxes, their minds tethered to a bygone era while their bodies inhabit the present. Their journey forces us to confront the nature of time, memory, and identity. What are we without the continuity of our past? They are time travelers of the most tragic kind, having journeyed into the future at the cost of their own history, left to navigate a world that is both home and at the same time, a distant and alien planet. Their existence is a quiet, astonishing testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring, enigmatic power of the mind to, against all odds, find its way back.